The Pyrrhic War, which lasted from 280 to 275 BC, was a conflict within the Roman Republic and Pyrrhus, the king of Epirus. Pyrrhus was asked by the people of Tarentum, a Greek city in southern Italy, to help them fight against the Romans. Pyrrhus, a skilled commander, won initial battles against the Roman legions with his strong army and wore elephants, which the Romans were not familiar with. However, he suffered heavy losses which he couldn't recover from due to Epirus' limited resources. Meanwhile, the Romans had a large manpower pool and could easily replace their losses. By 290 BC, Rome had become a dominant power in central and southern Italy, forming alliances with local Italic peoples. To the south, there were Greek city-states known as Magna Graecia, with Tarentum being the largest and most powerful. Tarentum had a dispute with Rome due to a violation of an old treaty that specified Rome was not to send warships into the Tarentine Gulf. In 282 BC, Rome placed soldiers in the Greek cities of Turi, Locri, and Rhegium, and sent warships to Turi to protect against Italian people of Lucania. However, the Tarentines became anxious and attacked the Romans in Turi, forcing them to leave the city and sinking some of their warships. With Rome ready to attack, Tarentum was in a precarious position and needed help from a stronger power. The Romans had become a dominant force and were about to conquer all the Greek cities in Magna Graecia. The Tarentines asked Pyrrhus, the king of Epirus, to lead their war against the Romans. Pyrrhus was inspired by the Oracle of Delphi to help the Tarentines and saw an opportunity to create his own empire in Italy. He formed an alliance with Ptolemy Keranos, the king of Macedon, and arrived in Italy in 280 BC. Pyrrhus entered Italy with an army consisting of 20,000 infantry, 3,000 cavalry, 2,000 archers, 500 slingers, and 20 war elephants in a bid to subdue the Romans. The elephants had been loaned to him by Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who had promised 9,000 soldiers and a further 50 elephants to defend Epirus while Pyrrhus and his army were away. The Romans, led by consul Publius Valerius Laevinus, marched against Pyrrhus and his Italic allies. Pyrrhus sent a letter to the Romans asking them to leave him to settle their differences with the Tarentines and other peoples, and offering to arbitrate justly and redress any damage. However, the Romans refused. Pyrrhus then took to the field with his forces and set up his camp between the city of Pandosia and Heraclea, in the Roman province of Lucania. The Romans, led by consul Publius Valerius Laevinus, attacked, but due to his superior cavalry, his elephants, and his deadly phalanx infantry, Pyrrhus defeated them in the Battle of Heraclea in July 280 BC. There are conflicting sources about the casualties. Hieronymus of Cardia reports the Romans lost about 7,000, while Pyrrhus lost 3,000 soldiers, including many of his best. Dionysius gives a bloodier view of 15,000 Roman dead and 13,000 Epirot. After this victory, several tribes including the Lucanians, Bruti, Messapians, and the Greek cities of Croton and Locri joined Pyrrhus. He then offered the Romans a peace treaty, which was eventually rejected. Pyrrhus tried to wrest Campania from the Romans, but was thwarted in this by the reinforced army of Laevinus. He then boldly marched on Rome itself, but found its defenses too formidable. Meanwhile, the Romans had made peace with the Etruscans and had recalled Tiberius Coruncanius, the other consul, who was marching his armies southwards from Etruria towards Rome. Pyrrhus now faced three armies: the garrison of Rome, Laevinus from the south, and Coruncanius from the north. Not wanting to be caught between three armies, Pyrrhus withdrew to Tarentum, where he wintered his troops. When Pyrrhus invaded Apulia in 279 BC, the two armies met in the Battle of Asculum, where Pyrrhus won a costly victory. The consul Publius Decius Mus was the Roman commander, and while his able force was ultimately defeated, they almost managed to break the back of Pyrrhus' Epirot army, guaranteeing the security of Rome itself. In the end, the Romans lost 6,000 men and Pyrrhus 3,500, including many officers. Pyrrhus later famously commented on his victory at Asculum, stating, "If we are victorious in one more battle with the Romans, we shall be utterly ruined." It is from reports of this semi-legendary event that the term Pyrrhic victory originates. In 278 BC, Pyrrhus received two offers simultaneously. The Greek cities in Sicily asked him to come and drive out Carthage, which along with Rome was one of the two great powers of the Western Mediterranean. At the same time, the Macedonians, whose king Ptolemy Keranos had been killed by invading Gauls, asked Pyrrhus to ascend the throne of Macedon. Pyrrhus decided that Sicily offers him a greater opportunity, and sailed his army there. In 278 BC, soon after disembarking his army in Sicily, he lifted the Carthaginian siege of Syracuse. Pyrrhus was proclaimed king of Sicily. He was already making plans for his son Helenus to inherit the kingdom of Sicily, and his other son Alexander to be given Italy. In 277 BC, Pyrrhus captured Eryx, the strongest Carthaginian fortress in Sicily. This prompted the rest of the Carthaginian-controlled cities to defect to Pyrrhus. In 276 BC, Pyrrhus negotiated with the Carthaginians. Although they were inclined to come to terms with Pyrrhus, supply him money and send him ships once friendly relations were established, he demanded that Carthage abandon all of Sicily and make the Libyan Sea a boundary between themselves and the Greeks. The Greek cities of Sicily opposed making peace with Carthage, because of Carthaginians still controlled the powerful fortress of Lilybaeum, on the western end of the island. Pyrrhus eventually gave in to their proposals and broke off the peace negotiations. Pyrrhus' army then began besieging Lilybaeum. For 2 months, he launched unsuccessful assaults on the city, until finally he realized he could not mount an effective siege without blocking it from the sea as well. Pyrrhus then requested manpower and money from the Sicilians in order to construct a powerful fleet. When the Sicilians became unhappy about these contributions, he had to resort to compulsory contributions and forced to keep them in line. These measures culminated in him proclaiming a military dictatorship of Sicily and installing military garrisons in Sicilian cities. These actions were deeply unpopular, and soon Sicilian opinion became inflamed against him. The Sicilian Greeks, disillusioned with Pyrrhus, were prepared to form an alliance with the Carthaginians, their former adversaries. The Carthaginians took heart from this and sent another army against him. This army was promptly defeated. In spite of this victory, Sicily continued to grow increasingly hostile to Pyrrhus, who began to consider abandoning Sicily. At this point, Samnite and Tarentine envoys reached Pyrrhus and informed him that of all the Greek cities in Italy, only Tarentum had not been conquered by Rome. Pyrrhus made his decision and departed from Sicily. As his ship left the island, he turned and, foreshadowing the Pyrrhic Wars, said to his companions, "What a wrestling ground we are leaving, my friends, for the Carthaginians and the Romans." While his army was being transported by ship to mainland Italy, Pyrrhus' navy was destroyed by the Carthaginians at the Battle of the Strait of Messina, with 98 warships sunk or disabled out of 110. While Pyrrhus had been campaigning against the Carthaginians, the Romans had rebuilt their army by calling up thousands of fresh recruits. In 275 BC, near modern-day Benevento, the Roman consul Manius Curius Dentatus camped with his army. Pyrrhus, wanting to defeat him, sent part of his army to stop the other Roman consul from coming to Curius' aid. Pyrrhus then led a nighttime attack to surprise Curius, but his men got lost in the dense woods and arrived tired and visible at daylight. This led to the attack being repelled, and Pyrrhus lost half of his elephants. The next day, the Romans launched a counterattack, which initially failed due to Pyrrhus' cunning and the strong resistance of the Epirus troops. However, a second wave of attack, possibly using flaming arrows, scared the elephants, causing them to stampede against Pyrrhus' own soldiers. This led to disorder and forced Pyrrhus to withdraw from the battle. After this inconclusive battle, Pyrrhus decided to end his campaign in Italy and return to Epirus, which resulted in the loss of essentially all the gains he had made in Italy. Only the city of Tarentum remained under the dominion of the Epirites. Despite losing a lot of his men and money in the wars in Italy and Sicily, Pyrrhus went to war again, targeting the rival king Antigonus Gonatas of Macedon. Pyrrhus won the Battle of Aos in 274 BC, taking most of Macedon, but Antigonus held on to some coastal cities. Pyrrhus then turned to Sparta, where he was asked to attack and place a new leader in power. However, he faced strong resistance and lost his son Ptolemy in the battle. Next, Pyrrhus intervened in a dispute in Argos, but was trapped in the city streets. During the battle, an old woman threw a tile, knocking Pyrrhus off his horse and breaking his spine. A Macedonian soldier then beheaded him. Pyrrhus' death led to Antigonus giving him a respectful cremation and sending his son Helenus back to Epirus. Upon hearing of Pyrrhus' death, the Tarentines surrendered to Rome. The Pyrrhic War was the first time that Rome confronted the professional mercenary armies of the Hellenistic states of the Eastern Mediterranean. Rome's victory drew the attention of these states to the emerging power of Rome. Ptolemy II, the king of Egypt, established diplomatic relations with Rome. After the war, Rome asserted its hegemony over southern Italy.